My name is Evelyn Broadnax. I am 79 years old. And the day I collapsed on my kitchen floor, gasping for air, clutching my chest, thinking my life was over. My children were arguing in the living room about money. Not about me. About money. Before I tell you how loving my children more than myself almost killed me, please take a second to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss powerful stories like this. And please tell me in the comments what country you're watching from, so I know who is sitting with me right now. Because what I'm about to share is the truth many mothers never say out loud. I can't breathe. That's what I tried to say. But no sound came out. I was standing by the sink, washing a pot I had no strength to lift anymore when the room started spinning. My knees gave way, the plate shattered, and suddenly I was on the floor. Cold tile. Sharp pain. Fear. I pressed my hand to my chest. This is it, I thought. This is how it ends. In the next room, my son raised his voice. She always does this when money comes up. My daughter answered, angry. Well, maybe if she managed things better. Managed things better. I lay there on the floor, my body shaking, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would break through my ribs. And still, I tried to get up. Because that's what I had always done. I didn't always look like this. Bent. Tired. Breathing heavy just from standing. I used to be strong. I raised 3 children by myself after their father died. No life insurance, no savings, just faith and long hours. I worked 2 jobs. I skipped meals. I wore the same shoes until the soles cracked. And every time my body begged me to rest, I told it no. Because my children needed me. I loved them more than myself. And that love cost me more than I knew. Mom. That was my daughter's voice, finally noticing something was wrong. She walked into the kitchen and froze when she saw me. Oh my God, she said. Mom. My son followed behind her. What now? He muttered, then saw me on the floor. Everything changed in his face. They rushed to me then. Too late. Too slow. What did you do? My daughter asked, panic rising. I wanted to laugh. What did I do? I gave you everything. At the hospital, doctors spoke in calm voices. Severe exhaustion. Malnutrition. Stress-induced collapse. One doctor looked at my children and said something that still rings in my ears. She's been running on empty for years. Years. Not weeks. Not months. Years. I watched my children stand there in silence. And for the first time in my life, I didn't rush to comfort them. I was too tired. Later that night, alone in the hospital bed, I stared at the ceiling and remembered all the times I ignored myself. The day I sold my wedding ring to pay my son's tuition. The nights I stayed awake worrying about their rent instead of my own health. The meals I skipped so they could eat. I remembered my doctor warning me years ago. You need to slow down. I laughed back then. I can't, I said. I'm a mother. The next morning, my son came into the room alone. He stood at the foot of my bed, arms crossed. You scared us, he said. Not I'm sorry. Not thank you. Just you scared us. I didn't mean to, I replied. That was my first mistake. Because even then, I was apologizing for almost dying. You can't keep doing this, he said. We have our own lives. My heart cracked open. I know, I whispered. He sighed. We need to talk about the house. The house. While my heart was still weak. While machines beeped beside me. That was the moment I realized something painful. I loved my children more than myself. But they had learned to love themselves first. And maybe I had taught them that. As he turned to leave, my daughter appeared at the door. We'll come back later, she said. Get some rest. Rest. I watched them walk out. And as the door closed, I felt something deeper than pain. I felt empty. Not because I had nothing left, but because I had given everything away. And lying there, weak and shaking, I asked myself a question that scared me more than death itself. If I keep loving them this way, will there be anything left of me to save? I closed my eyes. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I woke up to the sound of machines. Soft beeps, slow breaths, a tight feeling in my chest that reminded me I was not home. For a moment, I thought it was a dream. Then the ache in my body told me the truth. I was still in the hospital. I tried to sit up, but my arms felt weak, like they did not belong to me anymore. A nurse came in quickly. "Easy now," she said gently. "You need to rest." Rest. That word followed me everywhere now. "I'm fine," I whispered. She smiled, but her eyes were serious. "You've been strong for too long." Those words stayed with me after she left. Strong for too long. I stared at the ceiling and thought about how being strong had always been my job. No one ever asked me if I wanted it. They just needed it, and I gave it. The door opened again. My daughter came in this time. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled back quickly, like she had rushed. She sat down beside my bed and sighed. "You really scared us," she said again. I nodded. "I'm sorry." The words slipped out without thinking. She frowned. "Why do you always say that?" I didn't answer. Because apologizing had become my first language. She looked around the room, then back at me. "The doctor said you need help." "Help?" I waited. "With what?" I asked. "With everything," she replied. "You can't live like this anymore." I almost laughed. This was the life I built for them. "I've been living like this for years," I said quietly. She didn't hear me, or maybe she didn't want to. "We'll figure something out," she continued, "but things have to change." I nodded again. Change always sounded good when other people said it. When she left, my son came in not long after. He didn't sit down. He stood by the wall, arms crossed, looking uncomfortable. "How you feeling?" he asked. "Tired," I replied. He nodded. "Yeah, that makes sense." Silence followed. Then he cleared his throat. "We need to talk about money." My heart sank. Even here. Even now. "I don't have much," I said softly. "I know," he replied. "That's the problem." The problem. Not my health. Not my body giving up. Money. "We've been helping you a lot," he continued. I closed my eyes. Helping. I wanted to remind him of the years I paid his bills without telling him. The times I skipped my own needs so he could have more. But I didn't. I never did. "We can't keep doing this," he said. I opened my eyes and looked at him. "I never asked you to." He frowned. "That's not fair." "Neither is dying on a kitchen floor," I replied quietly. He looked away. "Mom," he said, softer now, "you need to think about yourself for once." The words felt strange. Think about myself. I don't know how, I admitted. He sighed and checked his phone. "We'll talk later." And just like that, he was gone. Again. That afternoon, the doctor came back. An older woman with kind eyes. She pulled a chair close to my bed and sat down. "Evelyn," she said, "your body is exhausted." "I know," I replied. "No," she said gently, "you don't." She explained things slowly. About stress. About how long-term neglect of your own health can do quiet damage. "You've been burning yourself to keep others warm," she said. That sentence hit me hard. Burning myself. She looked at me carefully. "If nothing changes, this will happen again, and next time it could be worse." Worse? Like dying? I asked. She didn't answer right away. "Yes," she said finally. I swallowed. She reached out and touched my hand. You deserve care too. I wanted to believe her. But belief is hard when your whole life teaches you the opposite. That night, alone again, I cried quietly. Not loud, not dramatic. Just tired tears. I cried for the woman I used to be, the one who laughed easily, the one who danced in the kitchen before life got heavy. I cried because I realized something painful. Loving my children, more than myself, had not taught them to love me back. It had taught them to expect it. The next morning, my daughter came in with papers. Doctors want to discharge you soon, she said, but we need to talk about what happens next. She placed the papers on the bed. We think it might be best if you don't live alone anymore. My heart skipped. What do you mean? I asked. She hesitated. Maybe come stay with one of us, or somewhere else. Somewhere else. That sounded final. I've lived in my house for 40 years, I said. She nodded. We know, but it's not safe anymore. Safe. That word again. And what about what I want? I asked quietly. She looked uncomfortable. This isn't about wants. It never was. I need you to understand, she continued. We can't keep dropping everything when you get sick. The words felt like a slap. I looked at her. Do you hear yourself? I asked. She sighed. You're being emotional. Emotional. That word women get when they tell the truth. I leaned back against the pillow, my chest tight. I almost died, I said, and you're worried about inconvenience. Her face hardened. That's not fair. Neither is loving people until it breaks you, I replied. She stood up abruptly. We'll talk later. And she left. Again. After she went, I stared at the papers on my bed. Plans. Decisions. Arrangements. All made without me. My hands trembled as I picked them up. For the first time, a dangerous thought crossed my mind. What if loving them this way had made me invisible? What if I disappeared slowly, and no one noticed until it was too late? I folded the papers carefully and placed them beside me. Because something inside me was waking up. Not anger. Not hate. Awareness. And deep down, I knew the hardest part was coming. Because if I stopped loving them the way I always had, they would not like who I became next. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The papers stayed on my bedside table all night. I did not touch them again. Every time I looked at them, my chest felt tight, like they were already deciding my life without asking me. I had lived long enough to know that when people start making plans for you, they stop seeing you as a person. They see you as a problem to manage. In the early morning, before the nurses came in, I whispered a prayer. Lord, please don't let me disappear while I'm still alive. I didn't know why I said that, but I felt it deep inside me. When I finally went home, my daughter drove me. She didn't talk much. The road stayed quiet between us, filled with things neither of us wanted to say. When we pulled into my driveway, she looked at the house like it was already something from the past. You should really think about moving, she said softly. I nodded. I did not argue. Not because I agreed, but because I needed time. Inside, the house smelled the same. Clean soap, old wood, memories. I sat down slowly, my body still weak, my heart still fragile. My daughter stood in the doorway. I'll come by tomorrow, she said. We need to talk about next steps. Next steps. She left before I could answer. That afternoon, my son came by. He walked through the house like a visitor, not like someone who grew up there. He looked around, hands in his pockets. You should sell this place, he said. I stared at him. Sell it, I repeated. It's too much for you, he replied. Too big, too expensive. This house raised you, I said quietly. He shrugged. That was a long time ago. A long time ago. You want me to sell my home, I said slowly, because I got sick. He sighed. Because you're getting old. That word landed hard. Old. And what happens to me? I asked. He hesitated. We'll figure something out. Something. Not somewhere. Not home. Just something. I felt a small crack open inside my chest. I loved you more than myself, I said softly. Do you know that? He looked uncomfortable. That's what parents do. And what do children do? I asked. He didn't answer. He checked his watch. We'll talk later, okay? Later again. Always later. He left without hugging me. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The same place I collapsed. The same floor that caught my body, and my children's voices did not. I made myself a small meal, just enough. The doctor's words echoed in my head. You deserve care too. I ate slowly. For the first time in years, I did not save half for later. I finished my plate. That felt strange. Over the next few days, they came and went. Always with advice. Always with concern. But never with listening. You need help. You can't do this alone. You have to be realistic. Not once did anyone ask me what I wanted. I began to notice something. When I said yes to everything, they smiled. When I asked questions, they grew impatient. When I stayed quiet, things moved faster. That scared me. One afternoon, I overheard my daughter on the phone. She can't stay there forever, she said. We need to make a decision soon. I stood in the hallway, unseen. I know she'll fight it, she continued, but we know what's best. What's best? That sentence almost broke me. I walked back into my room and closed the door quietly. My hands shook. I sat on the bed and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I looked smaller than I remembered, but my eyes looked clearer. I realized something painful. Loving my children more than myself had taught them that my life belonged to them. And now, they were ready to take it over. That night, I made a choice. A small one, but it felt big. When my daughter called, I did not answer right away. I let the phone ring. Then I let it ring again. My heart raced. This was new. Finally, I answered. Yes, I said calmly. We need to talk, she said. I found a place. A place? I asked. Yes, she replied. It's safe, they'll take care of you. My chest tightened. I repeated. It's just temporary, she said quickly, until we sort things out. Temporary. I closed my eyes. Did you ask me? I asked. She paused. Mom, this is for your own good. That sentence again. I almost died, I said quietly, and you're planning my life without me. She sighed. You're being difficult. Difficult. That's what strong women become when they stop agreeing. I need time, I said. There isn't much, she replied. We need to move fast. I opened my eyes. Then slow down, I said. Silence. I'll call you tomorrow, she said sharply. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone. My heart pounding. My hands steady. For the first time, I did not apologize. And that scared me. Because I knew. If I kept choosing myself, even in small ways, my children would not recognize me anymore. And whatever came next would test how much of myself I was finally willing to save. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. That night, I barely slept. Every sound felt louder than it should be. The ticking clock, the refrigerator humming, my own breathing. I kept thinking about the word my daughter used. They will take care of you. They know what's best. I had raised my children to speak clearly, yet now my life was being passed around in soft words that hid hard decisions. In the morning, I made myself tea and sat by the window. The sun came up like it always did, steady and patient. I wondered when my life stopped being allowed to move at that same pace. I thought about all the times I had rushed for them. When my son called at midnight needing rent money. When my daughter showed up crying after a bad breakup. When I ignored my own pain because theirs felt louder. I never said slow down to them. But now, when I said it once, it became a problem. My daughter arrived around noon. She didn't knock. She never did anymore. She walked in with her purse already on her shoulder, like she had somewhere else to be. "We need to talk," she said. I nodded and sat down. She pulled out papers again. Always papers. "I found a care home not far from here," she said. "It's clean, safe, they have nurses." I stared at the papers without touching them. "I am not sick," I said. She frowned. "Mom, you collapsed." "Because I was tired," I replied. "Not because I forgot who I am." She sighed, frustrated. "You're not listening." "No," I said calmly. "You're not." That stopped her. She looked at me closely, like she was seeing me for the first time. "You're being stubborn," she said. I felt something shift inside my chest. "I was stubborn when I raised you alone," I replied. "I was stubborn when I worked 2 jobs. I was stubborn when I skipped meals so you could eat." Her eyes narrowed. "This isn't about the past." "It is for me," I said. She stood up. "You can't live here alone." "I have lived here alone for years," I replied. "And now you almost died," she snapped. I leaned forward. "And you almost lost me. But instead of asking how I feel, you're packing me away." She looked shocked. "I'm trying to help you," she said. "Then help me stay," I replied. Silence fell between us. She picked up the papers slowly. "You're not thinking clearly," she said. That hurt more than I expected. "I have never thought more clearly in my life," I replied. She shook her head. "We don't have time for this." Time again. Always rushing when it comes to me. She grabbed her purse. "I'll talk to your brother." She walked out before I could respond. That evening, my son called. "We need to be realistic," he said. I closed my eyes. "Realistic about what?" "About your limits," he replied. "My limits kept you alive," I said quietly. He sighed. "That's not fair." I laughed softly. Neither is deciding my future without my voice. There was silence on the line. "Mom," he said carefully, "you're getting older." "So are you," I replied. "That doesn't mean you disappear." He didn't answer. "We'll talk later," he said. Later again. I hung up first. That night, I stood in my bedroom and looked around. The dresser I bought used. The bed I slept in after long shifts. The walls that held every prayer I whispered. I realized something then. They weren't afraid I would die. They were afraid I would need too much. And loving my children more than myself had trained them to expect my sacrifice without question. The next morning, I felt stronger. Not in my body. In my spirit. I made breakfast, a full one: eggs, toast, fruit. I ate slowly. I took my medicine on time. I rested when I needed to. It felt strange, but it felt right. Around noon, there was a knock on the door. Not my daughter. Not my son. A woman stood outside with a folder and a polite smile. "Mrs. Broadnax?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "I'm from the assisted living facility," she said. "Your children asked me to stop by and assess the home." My heart dropped. They hadn't told me. She stepped inside, looking around, taking notes. "This is just routine," she said cheerfully. Routine. I felt my hands curl into fists. Because in that moment, I understood something very clearly. This wasn't concern anymore. It was control. And if I didn't speak up now, I would be moved quietly, carefully, without ever being asked again. As the woman walked toward my bedroom, clipboard in hand, she smiled and said, "This won't take long." But I knew. What she was measuring wasn't my home. It was how easy I would be to remove. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I watched the woman walk through my house like it already belonged to someone else. She smiled as she opened doors. She nodded as she wrote notes. She spoke softly, like kindness would make this easier. "This room could work well," she said, peeking into my bedroom. "We like to make transitions smooth." Transitions. That word made my chest tighten. "I didn't ask for this," I said quietly. She paused and looked at me with polite surprise. "Oh, I know, but your children are concerned." Concerned. That word again. "I am right here," I said. "You can ask me." She smiled awkwardly. "Of course, but they asked us to assess." Assess? Like I was an object. She kept writing. "How many steps to the bathroom? Do you cook for yourself? Do you ever forget to eat?" I answered slowly. "No." "Yes. Sometimes." She nodded like she had already decided something. "This place has memories," she said kindly, "but safety matters." I felt something rise in me then. Not anger. Pride. "I raised 3 children here," I said. "I survived loss here, I prayed here, I collapsed here and got back up." She stopped writing. "I am not unsafe," I continued. "I am tired." She closed her folder gently. "I understand, but families worry." "My family worries about convenience," I replied. Her eyes widened slightly. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean." "I know what you meant," I said, "but you came without my permission." Silence. She cleared her throat. "I'll report back what I saw." I nodded. "Tell them I am still capable of speaking for myself." She gave a small smile and left. The door closed behind her. I stood in the quiet house, my heart beating fast. They had crossed a line. My phone rang almost immediately. It was my daughter. "Why was someone here?" I asked before she could speak. She hesitated. "I was going to tell you." "When?" I asked. She sighed. "Mom, don't make this harder." "I didn't invite her," I said. "We're trying to help you," she replied. "You sent a stranger to measure my life," I said, "without asking me." Silence. "You're overreacting," she said. That word again. I took a deep breath. "I loved you more than myself," I said slowly, "and now you think you can decide my life without my voice." "That's not fair," she snapped. "Neither is this," I replied. She raised her voice. "You can't live alone anymore." "I can," I said, "and I will for now." She went quiet. "You're being selfish," she said finally. Selfish. After everything. That word hit me harder than the collapse. "I almost died," I said, "and you're angry because I won't disappear quietly." She exhaled sharply. "We'll talk later." "No," I said, "we'll talk now or not at all." She hung up. That night, my son showed up. Unannounced. He stood in my doorway with that same serious face. "You embarrassed us," he said. I stared at him, by breathing. He frowned, by refusing help. "I refused control," I corrected. He shook his head. "You don't understand how this looks." I stood up slowly, my body still weak but my voice steady. "I understand exactly how it looks," I said. "It looks like my children deciding I'm done." "That's not what this is," he replied. "Then why does it feel like a goodbye?" I asked. He didn't answer. "We can't keep worrying about you," he said. I nodded. "Then don't." That surprised him. "You don't have to," I continued, "but you don't get to move me like furniture." He stared at me. "You're different," he said. "Yes," I replied. "I had to be. Loving you almost killed me." Silence filled the room. He rubbed his face. "You're making this complicated." "No," I said. "I'm making it honest." He left without another word. That night, I sat alone again. But I was not empty. I felt something growing inside me. Boundaries. I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. My children loved me, but they loved me best when I cost them nothing. And now that I was asking for respect instead of sacrifice, they didn't know what to do with me. I picked up the papers from the table, the plans they made, the decisions they wrote without me. I folded them once, then again, and again, until they were small, manageable. I placed them in a drawer. Not the trash. Not yet. Because I knew something important. This fight was not over. And the next choice I made would force them to see me not as a burden, but as a woman who still belonged to herself. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The next morning, my body felt sore, but my mind felt clear. That was new. Usually pain made me quiet, made me bend, made me say yes just to keep peace. But that morning, I woke up knowing something had changed. I moved slowly, the way the doctor told me to. I made breakfast and sat at the table instead of standing. I rested when my chest felt tight. I listened to my body instead of fighting it. For years, I treated my body like an enemy that slowed me down. Now I was finally listening. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message from my daughter. "We need to talk today. This can't wait." I stared at the screen. Everything they said, couldn't wait, had always waited until I was the one suffering. I typed back calmly. "I'm resting today. We can talk tomorrow." 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, a reply came. "This isn't about what you want." My hands trembled. I set the phone down. Because for the first time in my life, I did not respond right away. That afternoon, I went for a short walk. Just down the street and back. The sun felt warm on my face. Neighbors waved. One woman stopped me. "We heard you were sick," she said. "I'm glad you're still here." Still here. Those words mattered more than she knew. When I got back home, there was a car in my driveway. My daughter. And my son. Together. My chest tightened. I unlocked the door slowly and walked inside. They were already seated. Like they owned the place. "We didn't know where you were," my daughter said sharply. "I was walking," I replied. "You shouldn't be out alone," my son said. "I'm not a child," I said. Silence followed. They exchanged looks. That look. The one they used when they thought I was being unreasonable. "We made a decision," my daughter said. I sat down. "So did I replied. They looked surprised. "You're not moving," I continued. "Not right now." My son leaned forward. "Mom, this isn't safe." "What's not safe?" I asked. "Me living in my own home, or you not being able to control what happens?" He opened his mouth. Closed it. "This is about your health," my daughter said. "Then ask me how I feel," I replied. She hesitated. "How do you feel?" I took a breath. "I feel tired," I said. "But not helpless. I feel weak but not finished. I feel alive." They stared at me. "You don't understand how serious this was," my son said. "I understand perfectly," I replied. "I collapsed because I gave everything away, and now you want the rest too." "That's not fair," my daughter snapped. "Neither is loving people until you disappear," I said. She stood up. "So what's your plan?" I looked at them both. "My plan," I said slowly, "is to recover here, with help I choose, and to stop saying yes to things that hurt me." They looked shocked. "You can't just decide that," my son said. "I already did," I replied. My daughter crossed her arms. "If you fall again." "I'll handle it," I said. "You can't," she replied. "I have for decades," I said calmly. Her voice rose. "You're being unreasonable." I stood up slowly, steadying myself on the table. No, I said. I'm being honest, and honesty feels loud when people are used to your silence. They didn't like that. I could see it. This is exactly why we worry, my son said. You don't listen. I listened my whole life, I replied. That's why I almost died. Silence filled the room. For a moment, I thought maybe something had reached them. Then my daughter said something that broke my heart. If you won't cooperate, we'll have to make decisions without you. My breath caught. Say that again, I said quietly. She swallowed. You're not thinking clearly. There it was. The line they crossed. You think because I'm old and tired, I said slowly, you can take my voice. My son sighed. This isn't going anywhere. They stood up. My daughter paused at the door. We're doing this because we love you, she said. I looked at her. Then start listening, I replied. They left. Again. But this time, something felt different. I was no longer afraid of their disappointment. Because I had finally seen the truth. They were not trying to save me. They were trying to manage me. And that meant the next step would not be gentle. That night, as I locked my door, my phone buzzed. A new message. From a number I didn't recognize. We can help you make this easier. My heart dropped. Because I knew what that meant. They had gone behind my back again. And whatever they were planning next would test how far I was willing to go to protect myself. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I stared at the message for a long time. We can help you make this easier. No name. No explanation. Just those words. My hands felt cold. I did not reply. I set the phone down and sat very still, listening to my own breathing. I had learned something important over the years. When people stop talking clearly, it means they are already moving pieces behind your back. I went to bed that night with the phone beside me, but sleep did not come easily. Every creak of the house made me alert. Not because I was afraid of strangers, but because I knew my children. The next morning, the phone rang early. Too early. It was my son. Did you get a message? He asked. Yes, I replied. He cleared his throat. It's just someone who helps families plan transitions. Transitions again. I didn't ask for help, I said. We did, he replied. My chest tightened. You asked someone to contact me without my consent, I said slowly. We're trying to avoid stress, he said. I almost laughed. Then stop creating it, I replied. He sighed. Mom, you're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm making it honest, I said. There was silence on the line. You don't understand how bad this could get, he finally said. I understand perfectly, I replied. I understand that loving you more than myself taught you that my voice didn't matter. That's not fair, he snapped. Neither is planning my life without me, I said. He hung up. An hour later, there was a knock at the door. I opened it slowly. 2 people stood outside. A woman with a folder, and a man with a polite smile. Mrs. Broadnax, the woman said, we're here to talk about support options. I felt my heart pound. I didn't invite you, I said. The man nodded gently. Your children asked us to check in. Check in. They stepped forward. I did not move. This is my home, I said, and I do not give permission for this visit. The woman looked uncomfortable. We just want to talk. No, I replied. You want to convince. The man raised his hands. There's no pressure. I smiled sadly. There is always pressure when people speak for you, I said. They exchanged a look. We'll come back another time, the woman said. No, I replied. You won't. I closed the door. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. I leaned against the door and let out a long breath. They were escalating. Later that afternoon, my daughter came by. She didn't knock. She walked in angry. "You embarrassed us," she said. "You sent strangers to my house," I replied. "They're professionals," she snapped. "And I'm still a person," I said. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. "You've changed," she said. "Yes," I replied. "I had to." She shook her head. "You're acting like we're the enemy." "No," I said softly. "You're acting like I'm the problem." Silence. She looked away. "You don't see how serious this is," she said. "I see it clearly," I replied. "I see how close I came to dying and how quickly you tried to move me out of the way." "That's not what we're doing," she said. "Then why does it feel like you're erasing me?" I asked. Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared," she said quietly. I nodded. So was I for years, alone. She didn't answer. "I need time," I continued. "Real time, not rushed decisions made in meetings I'm not invited to." She wiped her face. "What if something happens again?" "Then we face it together," I said, "not by taking my voice." She hesitated. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "Neither do I replied, "but I know how not to." She left without another word. That evening, I sat at the table and opened a notebook. I began to write. Dates, calls, messages, visits, everything. Because something inside me knew this was no longer just family concern. It was becoming something else. Control wrapped in love. And I needed to be ready. As I closed the notebook, my phone buzzed again. A new message. "If you don't cooperate, this will go a different way." My heart stopped. Because that wasn't concern. That was a warning. And I knew then. Whatever my children planned next would force me to choose between peace and survival. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The message stayed on my phone all night. "If you don't cooperate, this will go a different way." I read it again and again, hoping the meaning would soften if I stared long enough. It didn't. By morning, my chest felt tight, not from sickness, but from knowing something important had shifted. This was no longer about help. It was no longer about worry. It was about control. I had spent my whole life confusing love with obedience. And now that I was no longer obedient, love had started to sound like a threat. I sat at the edge of my bed and pressed my feet to the floor slowly. The room felt the same, but I didn't. My body was still weak, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I whispered to myself, "You are still here." That mattered. I made breakfast and ate it all. I took my medicine. I wrote in my notebook again, carefully, writing down the exact words from the message. I did not want to forget anything. People who threaten quietly rely on your doubt later. Around mid-morning, there was another knock at the door. This time, I didn't open it right away. I stood behind the door and listened. "Mama," my daughter's voice called, "it's me." I waited a few seconds longer than usual before opening the door. She stood there alone. No folder, no clipboard, no polite strangers, just her, but her face was tight, controlled, like she had practiced this conversation. "You didn't answer my calls," she said. "I was resting," I replied. She stepped inside without asking. That used to be normal. Today, it felt like a reminder. "We need to talk," she said again. I walked slowly to the chair and sat down. "So do I replied. She remained standing. "That message you got," she said carefully, "wasn't meant to scare you." I looked up at her. "Then what was it meant to do?" She hesitated. "It was meant to make you understand how serious this is." I nodded slowly. "I understand perfectly." She exhaled. "You're not hearing us." "No," I said. "You're not hearing me." Her shoulders stiffened. "You collapsed," she said. "You almost died." "Yes," I replied. "And if that happens again?" "It will happen again," I interrupted gently, if I go back to living the way you expect me to? She stared at me. So what, we just wait? No, I said. We change how we love. She frowned. What does that even mean? It means, I said slowly, I stop sacrificing myself so you feel comfortable. Her eyes filled with frustration. You're twisting this, she said. No, I replied. I'm finally nomming it. She sat down across from me, rubbing her temples. You don't know how hard this is for us, she said. I looked at her carefully. I know exactly how hard it is, I said. I carried you through it. That made her flinch. Silence stretched between us. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. If you won't agree, we may have to take this further. I felt the room tilt. Further how? I asked calmly. She looked away. There are legal options. My heart thudded. Not court. Not judges. But the word legal still felt heavy. You're talking about taking my choices away, I said. We're talking about protecting you, she replied quickly. By deciding I'm no longer capable, I said. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I leaned back in my chair. Do you know what hurts the most? I asked quietly. She looked at me. It's not that I almost died, I continued. It's that when I did, your first thought was how to manage me, not how to hear me. Her lips trembled. That's not true, she whispered. It is, I said softly. And that truth is the reason I'm still sitting here instead of apologizing. She stood up abruptly. You're pushing us away, she said. No, I replied. I'm stepping toward myself. She shook her head. You're going to regret this. I met her eyes. I already regret almost dying for people who won't let me live. She left without another word. The door closed harder than necessary. That afternoon, my son called again. I let it ring. Then I let it ring again. When I finally answered, I spoke first. I'm not moving, I said. He sighed. You're forcing our hand. No, I replied. You're choosing control. You're not thinking straight, he snapped. I am thinking clearly for the first time in years, I said. This isn't about pride, he said. No, I replied. It's about dignity. He laughed sharply. You're being dramatic. That word again. I felt something settle in me. You're afraid, I said calmly. Silence. You're afraid that if I stop giving everything, I continued, you'll have to look at how much you've taken. That's not fair, he said. Neither is treating my life like an inconvenience, I replied. He hung up. I did not call back. That evening, I sat alone at the kitchen table again. The same place where my body gave out. The same place where my children argued while I lay on the floor. But this time, I didn't feel small. I felt awake. I realized something then. My children did not want me dead. But they were prepared to erase me quietly if it made their lives easier. And loving them more than myself had taught them that was acceptable. I opened my notebook and wrote one sentence in large letters. I am still alive. Then I underlined it. Twice. Late that night, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another message. We can do this the easy way. My hands did not shake this time. I typed back slowly. There is no easy way to take someone's voice. The reply came almost instantly. Then don't make it harder. I stared at the screen. And for the first time since this started, I smiled. Because I finally understood something they didn't expect. I was no longer afraid of losing their approval. And that meant the power they thought they had over me was already slipping away. But I also knew this. People don't threaten twice unless they plan to act. And whatever they tried next would force everything into the open. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I did not sleep much that night. Not because I was afraid, but because my mind would not stop working. For the first time in my life, I was not replaying what I should have done better for my children. I was not blaming myself for being tired, sick, or old. Instead, I was looking back and seeing patterns I had ignored for years. I saw how every time I gave more, they asked for more. How every time I said yes, my no became invisible. How my love became a resource they managed, instead of a bond they honored. I had confused being needed with being loved. And that confusion almost killed me. I lay there listening to the house settle, remembering moments I once thought were small. The time my son borrowed money and never paid it back. The time my daughter assumed I would watch her children without asking. The way decisions were made around me, not with me. I had called it family, but now I saw it clearly. It was entitlement dressed up as care. When the sun finally came up, I felt something different in my chest. Resolve. I got up slowly and made myself breakfast again. Eggs, toast, tea. I ate every bite. Then I sat down with my notebook. I began to write, not events this time, but memories. The day I sold my wedding ring and told myself it didn't matter. The night I ignored chest pain because my son needed help. The years I delayed doctor visits so I wouldn't be a burden. I wrote until my hand cramped. Not because I wanted to punish myself, but because I needed to see it. I needed proof that this did not happen overnight, that my collapse was not sudden. It was earned. Around mid-morning, my neighbor knocked. Mrs. Langley. She had lived across the street for 20 years. I heard voices last night, she said gently. I wanted to check on you. I'm okay, I replied. She looked at me carefully. You don't look okay. I smiled sadly. I'm becoming okay. She nodded, like she understood more than she said. If you need anything, she told me, I'm here. Those words landed softly but deeply. Not will decide for you. Just I'm here. After she left, I sat with that feeling. Support without control. It felt unfamiliar. And healing. Later that afternoon, my daughter came again. This time, she knocked. That alone told me something. I opened the door and stepped aside. She walked in slowly, like she was entering a space that no longer belonged to her. I didn't sleep, she said. Neither did I replied. She sat down and looked around. I don't recognize you, she said quietly. I nodded. That makes two of us. She swallowed. I'm scared. So am I replied. But we're scared for different reasons. She frowned. What does that mean? You're scared of losing control, I said gently. I'm scared of losing myself. She looked away. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. I know, I replied, but intention doesn't erase impact. Her eyes filled with tears. I just don't want you to die, she said. And I don't want to live like I already have, I replied. That made her cry. She covered her face with her hands, shaking. For a moment, my old instincts screamed at me to comfort her, to pull her close, to say everything was okay. But something stronger stopped me. Truth. I loved you more than myself, I said softly, and it almost killed me. She looked up at me, eyes red. I don't know how to fix this, she said. You don't fix it, I replied. You change how we move forward. She nodded slowly. Then help me understand, she said. What do you want? I took a breath. I want to stay in my home, I said. I want help I choose. I want my voice respected. And I want you to stop treating my love like it's endless. She listened. Really listened. I didn't know you felt erased, she whispered. I didn't let myself know either, I replied. She reached for my hand, then stopped herself. Can I? She asked. I nodded. She held my hand gently, like she was afraid of hurting me. I thought I was protecting you, she said. You were protecting your fear, I replied gently, not my life. She cried again. And this time, I let her. That evening, my son arrived. He looked tired, defensive, ready for a fight. But something in the room slowed him down. He sat across from me, silent. "I know what you're thinking," he said finally. "That we're the villains." "No," I replied. "I think you're my children, and you're wrong." He winced. "I almost died," I said. "And instead of asking me what I needed, you planned my removal." "That's not," he started. "I'm not done," I said calmly. He stopped. "I gave you everything," I continued. "Not because you demanded it, but because I believed that's what love was." He looked down. "But love that costs someone their life," I said, "is not love. It's sacrifice without consent." He rubbed his face. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I know," I replied, "but now you do." Silence filled the room. Then he said something I didn't expect. "We were scared you. Ask for more." That truth landed heavy. "You were afraid of me needing you," I said. He nodded. "And instead of saying that," I continued, "you tried to make me smaller." He didn't argue. That mattered. By the end of the night, nothing was solved. But everything had shifted. They left quietly. No threats. No papers. No strangers. Just space. I stood at the door after they left, listening to their footsteps fade. For the first time in weeks, I did not feel chased. I felt seen. But I also knew this was not over. Because people don't give up control easily, especially when they've benefited from it for decades. Later, alone again, my phone buzzed. A message. Not from my children. From that unknown number. "You think you've won." My stomach tightened. I stared at the screen. Then another message came. "This isn't finished." I set the phone down slowly. Because I finally understood something with painful clarity. This wasn't just about my children anymore. It was about everyone who had grown comfortable with my silence. And if I stayed standing now, someone was going to push back harder. I walked to the window and looked out into the quiet street. My home. My life. Still mine. For now. And I knew. Whatever came next would decide everything. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I did not reply to the message. "You think you've won." This isn't finished. For years, those kinds of words would have shaken me. They would have sent me into panic, into apology, into fixing something that wasn't broken in the first place. But that night, I turned the phone face down. Because for the first time in my life, I understood something clearly. I didn't need to win. I needed to live. The next morning, I woke up without dread. That surprised me. My body still hurt, my chest still felt weak, but my mind was calm in a way it hadn't been in decades. I made my breakfast and ate it slowly without guilt. I rested when my breath grew shallow. I listened to myself. I had spent so many years ignoring my body that it felt strange to honor it now. But it also felt right. Around noon, my daughter called. I answered. "Mom," she said softly, "can I come over?" "Yes," I replied. She arrived alone. No papers, no plans, no urgency, just her. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where I had collapsed, the same place where love had finally run out. "I've been thinking," she said, "about everything." I nodded. "So have I." She took a deep breath. "I didn't realize how much you gave up." I looked at her carefully. I didn't let myself realize either. She wiped her eyes. "I thought love meant you always said yes." "That's what I taught you," I said gently, "and that part is on me." She looked surprised. "You're not blaming us." "No," I replied. "I'm telling the truth." She nodded slowly. "I don't want you to disappear," she said. "I won't," I replied, "but I also won't vanish quietly to make life easier for anyone." She swallowed. I don't know how to love you without hurting you. I reached across the table and took her hand. Then we learn, I said, together. She squeezed my hand. That mattered. Later that day, my son came. He stood in the doorway for a moment before stepping inside. You look better, he said. I feel better, I replied. He sat down, rubbing his hands together. I was wrong, he said quietly. I waited. I thought taking control meant protecting you, he continued. But really, I was protecting myself. I nodded. I was scared you'd need more than I could give, he admitted. I never needed more, I said softly. I needed respect. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, he said. This time, the apology felt different. It didn't come from fear. It came from understanding. That evening, after they left, I sat alone in my living room. The house felt peaceful. Not empty. Peaceful. I realized something important then. Loving my children more than myself did not make me a better mother. It made me disappear. And when I disappeared, they didn't learn how to love me. They learned how to manage me. That was the truth I had avoided my whole life. But truth does not disappear just because you don't look at it. Days passed. No more messages. No more strangers. No more threats wrapped in concern. The silence this time felt different. It wasn't hiding something. It was making space. I hired help on my own terms, a woman who came twice a week, not to take over my life but to support it. I went to my doctor appointments. I rested. I ate. I said no when I needed to. And the world did not end. One afternoon, my daughter sat beside me on the porch. I used to think you were too strong, she said. Now I see you were just alone. I nodded. And I don't want that anymore, she added. Neither do I replied. She smiled softly. That night, I stood in front of the mirror. I looked older than I remembered. But I also looked alive. I touched my chest and whispered the truth out loud, the truth that had been waiting my whole life to be spoken. I loved my children more than myself. I paused, and it almost killed me. But then I said the words that saved me. I choose myself now too. Not instead of them, but alongside them. Because love that demands your life is not love. And love that allows you to live is the only kind worth keeping. For the first time in years, I went to bed without fear. And when I slept, I dreamed of nothing at all. Just rest. Just breath. Just being here. Alive. If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Somewhere out there, I might be reading.